had the 3 years at Preston, so after we lost that grand final, which was a tough grand final to lose, it was sort of marred by rain, poor wicket, and I think Dave Jeffrey did his back. So at the end of that year, you left the club, and you obviously were then very well prepared to take over the Victorian Shield team, because in 78, 79, you took over Victoria, won the Shield and the one-day game.
It's funny when I look back on my career, I wasn't ever a sort of player that was going to play hundreds of games anywhere. Mm-hmm. I was sort of always on the move to do things. Even when I played at Collingwood seconds at one stage, and I think I got third best and fairest in the seconds. I was contemplating I'd like to play baseball. I don't want to play football now. I wouldn't mind having a season of baseball. And I actually dropped out and had a half a season of baseball. I can't remember when that was. It was when I was playing with Collingwood seconds. And I said, I'm not playing this season. And that was before I went down, or when I was asked to go down to play with the Preston Football Club a bit later on. So I wasn't ever going to be playing hundreds of games. So I thought, well, gee, I've done pretty well at Preston. We couldn't have done any better. It's time for somebody else to have a bit of a crack at it. I look back on those 3 years, and as I look back on my few years of football at Preston, where we won the flag twice, had phenomenal time. I think we won 18 games in a row at one stage from one season to the next, and I just felt we were invincible. Again, like the cricket, I'd be running out Kramer Street and the other grounds playing against all those, some good players in VFA in those days, and pretty rough as well, of course. But I just went out there thinking, well, no one's going to stop me getting, 30 or 40 possessions, and no one's going to stop us winning. And that's what happened time after time with Alan Joyce being our coach, and he gave me a hell of a lot of encouragement. And the same was at Preston. So I thought, well, that's a pretty good stint there. And I gave it away, to concentrate on some research that I was doing. But Frank Tyson asked myself and another mate of mine, Neil Barris, who was working out at Phillip Institute at the time where I was. Frank asked me to come down and do the fitness work and help with a bit of preparation with the players. He knew I was thinking a bit more about cricket than I had when I was a player under his tutelage, because I'd coached and I was thinking about the weaknesses and the strengths of players we did have at the Preston Cricket Club. And, I was starting to learn a bit more about my own game, but it was a bit late. I had flaws that I really couldn't correct in myself. But that was a bit rough. And Frank asked me to come down to look after the team, just at practice. But then a week and a half, I think it was, or 2 weeks before the first Shield game, which was up at the Gabba, I got it, I was talking to Frank, I think it was at training, he gave me a call as well. And he said, oh, I've got a bit of a problem, Dick. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, I've just been offered a really good gig with the ABC on the Test series coming up in Australia as the chief commentator. And I'd really love to do that. I said, well, that's not a problem. I mean, that's fantastic. He said, yeah, well, the problem is that I can't be the coach and the manager of the team. I said, oh, well, that doesn't matter. I'm going to come down anyway. And when you get your coach and your manager, well, then it's not the end of the world, but you'll be able to come down and have a talk to the players anyway from time to time. I said, yeah, I'll do that. But then he said, well, hold on, we're not going to be able to get a coach and a manager for this first game at the Gabba. How would you like to do it? And that's bad. I said, well, hold on, all these guys are better cricketers than I ever dreamt of being. And but I obviously said, yes, well, I'll do it. They had no option anyway. There was no one else that was going to do it. Sam Loxton was the head of the selectors and a few of the others, and I didn't even know them. And they just gave me the nod and said, well, away you go. As it turned out, I don't know whether it was to save money, but no one else went with the team. I organised all the tickets on the plane and the hotels and the stuff like that. then I was called the coordinator. Then they called me the coaching coordinator. and then we won the Shield, and we won the one day. So obviously things went pretty well after a few rocky starts that I had. At the end of the year, I remember there were a couple of players, like ex-players like Keith Stackpole, had a bit of a crack at me in the paper saying, well, who is this guy anyway? And why is he coach? And someone else wrote into the paper and said, oh, well, he coached because they won the Shield and because they won the one-day game. So they asked me if I'd do it the following year. And I said, well, that'd be great. Yeah, I'll do it the following year. So they called me the coaching coordinator. I didn't want to be called coach anyway because I wasn't really doing that, even though I did have some biomechanical expertise, which allowed me to talk to a few players in some beneficial ways. And basically, we won the Shield again. so it was pretty good. And the year after that, we didn't win the Shield or the one day. A few of the other teams started to take on a few of the things we were doing with the fitness work and other work that we were doing, and we didn't do as well. I thought, well, that's 3 years. It's been a pretty good 3 years, and that was it. But that wasn't the reason I actually gave it away from the Victorian team. I'm not sure what I would have done, because I did enjoy the guys immensely, and it was, it wasn't though I was playing. It wasn't hard work, and but that was the time that I got asked to go up to the Institute of Sport again. An out of the blue thing that came my way that I'd never even contemplated in looking for in Canberra. So that sort of held up Melbourne, if you like.
You then went to Canberra, and you've been there for 40 years since, which is quite remarkable, really. But you went to the Australian Institute of Sport, which was newly formed by Malcolm Fraser as the first full-time sports scientist, with a brief to set up the various divisions and engage people and so on. A huge task, given that Australian sport at that time was seen to be struggling. Yes,
I always like to blow my bugle here a little bit, Lee, but then again, as a scientist, I know the difference between cause and correlation, that's for sure. And the correlation was that when I went to the Institute of Sport to set up sports science and sports medicine philosophy of how we're going to help coaches and so on, the previous Olympics, we'd won, I think, 4 medals. When I left the institute, in the sports science area, did a little bit of a stint of coaching. When I left, we won 54. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, that's not bad. That's a good time to get out from 4 to 54. And truly, though, it was a correlation, because one of the main reasons that we did so well in the Olympic Games and Commonwealth Games and so on, rocketed up, that listing there, was because we found ways to help coaches. It was the coaching and the dedication that the government, the new dedication the government had in support for elite level sport. So I was fortunate to be in a situation where that occurred. And one of the best things that the Institute of Sport did in Canberra was to stimulate the institutes of sport and academies in each state, so that we had athletes and coaches that didn't have to relocate to Canberra, which was never going to be the best method of doing things. For some teams, some groups it is. If you've got the rowing 8, they've got to be all together. You can't have 2 in one state, another 2 in another. You've got to get them. So one particular state's going to be good for some sports, but not for others. And to stimulate the Victorian Institute of Sport, or SASI, or the West Australian, the Queensland Academy of Sport, Northern Territory, all those sorts of things, Tassie, that really kicked along what was going on, and that contributed to the big improvement we had.
You were involved with the Australian Institute of Sport for the next 25 years, and you held, in addition, various sort of titles. Team psychologist to start with at the 84 Los Angeles Games for the swim team. You were the Australian distance running coach, 92, 96 Olympics. You managed the entire running program for a hell of a long time. you went to just about every Olympic Games from 1984 onwards.
Yeah, that's, you know, again, it's amazing what becomes normal practice. It was normal practice for me to go to Commonwealth Games, Olympics, and for people that I was working with as a physiologist, for example, and you mentioned psychology. It wasn't actually, it's funny you mentioned psychology, but my role was as a physiologist, but interestingly, you're probably correct, because a lot of the work we did as scientists there, as physiologists, or in my position as a physiologist, there was a lot of psychology involved as well. And one of the things that, you know, that did become clear to me through my coaching years, which started at Preston, was that you can't separate mind and body at all. That whenever I'm talking to a person as like an athlete, you know, an Olympic athlete, as a physiologist, I know that every word that I say is going to have some sort of impact. So you're a psychologist as well. And as a physiologist and not a sports psychologist, sometimes I can remember certain circumstances that became very powerful, because that person had no idea that what I was saying was anything to do with their psychology. It was just to tell them about, for example, the degree to which they'd improved in a certain area of their performance. And that made the role of a physiologist to tell my staff that as physiologists, remember that what you say to athletes can have a tremendous impact one way or the other. You know, you could just as much put them down and they could lose their confidence as to go the other way. So that became an important part of, you know, my coaching later on as well. And working with the swimming team, particularly the Australian swimming team, I can remember some circumstances where, in one particular circumstance, it really comes back to my mind very clearly, where the coach asked me to talk to the athlete, the swimmer, just before they went out to swim the final of the particular event. And the coach was too nervous to do anything about it. He was pretty upset, you know, really nervous. And I said, well, you sure, you know, like, he said, yeah. And I said, well, this is what I'm going to tell the athlete. And he said, that's exactly what, you do that, and you tell that swimmer that, and you know, and he knows that you know, this is what's going to happen. That's what I want to happen. And so I did that. You know, and that's a tremendous experience for that swimmer to go out. You know, I think he was ranked 6th in the final, and he did everything that the coach wanted him to do, that I'd reinforced, and actually, you know, got him to think about just before he went out. The guy was in a bit of a trance, so I could see that. But he went out, broke the world record, and won the gold medal. And like those sort of experiences, you know, on top of, you know, winning the overall championship, say at Preston Cricket Club, or with the footy club, or with winning the Sheffield Shield, and then later on coaching people to medals in Commonwealth Games and Olympics. Yeah, they're good memories to have. Good memories to have.